Good morning. Uh, this was kind of not last minute, but yet it was. Um, we talked to Alayna Royal, talked about wanting her to share her story about being not, but it wasn't until Tanya reminded me, you have announced officially. So the notes went out late. I'm not asking teachers, but I'm not going to spoil any of her notes. There's a lot of stuff that I would love to share with you, but I think she's going to do all the sharing. So it's all your time.
Okay, yay. Oh, well, good morning. I'm going to pass around some of these papers. You guys can just look at them, share them around. I'll start some over here. It just has some information on the trip. One of them is the itinerary. It's kind of long. You can just kind of go through that. There you go. And then this is the biographies of all the veterans that went on the trip with us. So I figured that'd be interesting for you guys to read. So I'll just kind of give a quick overview of what this is. So College of the Ozarks travel education, patriotic education travel program. They travel every year to some sort of place in the country and in the world, and take students and staff to do this. It's an educational experience, and so they started going to Vietnam, I think, in 2014, and they went quite a few years, and then COVID happened, and the whole school, everything was just kind of shut down. And so the first year that they went back to Vietnam was last year, and so this is their second year going back since. And we took 20 students, 10 girls, 10 guys, and then I think we had 7 or 8 sponsors, so staff and faculty, including the president of the college, General Schreffler, who's in charge of he's a vice president of patriotic education. He's a 2-star general for the Missouri State, so he's a pretty cool guy. And then had a bunch of other faculty and staff who went with us, and then we had 7 veterans. We had a couple of helicopter pilots, a fixed wing pilot, we had a tunnel rat, we had a ground soldier, and then we had a Navy. I can't remember. He was in the Navy. But so we all traveled. So the students, when we applied last year, get accepted, you have to take a class. It's a 400 level history class, U.S. and Vietnam, and you have to pass that class or you cannot go on the trip. And so the professor who taught it, actually, he was an adjunct this year because he technically retired last year, but he is in Dr. Dalton. He's a great guy, but really hard class. But he does a great job on really just explaining the war in general on the U.S. side and on the other side. Learned a lot more than I didn't think I would. And so it's all kind of shoved in there somewhere, all the dates and times and people. So this is, there's one of those, the itinerary, I think one of them has the map on it. But so these are all the places that we traveled. So we started off, we flew from Bentonville, Arkansas to Colorado to Tokyo, and then Tokyo to Saigon or Ho Chi Minh City. And that's where we started. And then we went down a little bit more south to Can Tho in the Mekong Delta area. Then back up, then we went all the way up north to Hanoi, which was a really cool place in North Vietnam. And we went to Ha Long Bay. And that's kind of where we had Ed, who was my veteran, who's the Navy guy, that's where he talked. Gulf of Tonkin is over there. And then we went down to the Central Highlands, to the DMZ and Hue and Hoi An, and we did not go to Quang Nai. We were supposed to have 8 veterans, but we had one of them, he kind of dropped off earlier before we left, so we didn't end up going there, but we did go to Bong Song, which is really cool. So, sorry, my mouth gets really dry when I talk. So I'm gonna let these are just pictures. I'm just gonna kind of let go through. These are all of the veterans and students, and I believe, yeah, these are just veterans and students. So that's Guy, we have Dan, and then Ed, which was my veteran. We have Frank and Greg, and then we have sorry, I can't, there's a glare, I can't see. We have John, and then I call him Gonzalez. He's a great guy. He was our tunnel rat actually, so he's a really cool guy. So now you guys, there'll just will be photos going, but so Dad wanted me to talk more about kind of my experience and like just the emotion that we saw, that we felt, and just how things happened while we were there. I wrote some notes down so I don't go off track. So I want to talk about Guy Gruters first. He was a fixed wing pilot who was shot down over Hanoi, and he was a POW for 6 years in the Hanoi Hilton. So Hanoi Hilton, if you've heard of that, it's very popular or well-known POW prison in Hanoi. We actually got to visit there, and there'll be a few pictures of there, but lots of it was actually a prison during the Indo-Chinese War too, and then a prison during the Vietnam War as well. And so it has it's connected to a lot of pain and suffering. And so we actually got to visit Hanoi Hilton with Guy. He has been back to Vietnam before, but he has a really cool story of redemption and faith. And it's one of the biggest things that I took back with me from this trip. Like, when we were there, we were doing so many things that you didn't really have the time to like sit and really just like think about it, because we were constantly moving. Even if you were on the bus for a few hours and sitting there, you were talking with the veterans, you were talking with the students. And so it was kind of, for me, what I noticed is when I got back to my dorm room and my roommate wasn't there, and it was just like me there for a few days. And there's just that time where I just had like that solidarity with the Lord, and I was just like thinking about everything that I saw and that we went through. And we're all 19 through 21, some 22-year-olds. We were the same age as all those guys were when they were last there. And so it was really cool. The vets, amazing guys. Yeah, that was the Hanoi Hilton. But they were constantly just saying, like, you guys are in the same, like, you're coming from America here, like, you're in the same age as we were. And so, but back to Guy's story, when he was shot down, they tried to, so the Vietnamese villagers, North Vietnamese, they had a bell in their villages. And when a helicopter airplane was shot down over there, they would ring the bell, and the villagers would go out and find them in sorts to kill them. And so it was often that happened, and that was the demise of multiple pilots who were shot down. But one of the other things is if government officials or North Vietnam Army got to them first, they would have to protect them. Even if they're the enemy, the NVA is the enemy, they have to protect those soldiers from those villagers. And so that's what happened with Guy. He was shot down, and he was able to evade for a few days due to some training, but the villagers found him, and they were going to kill him. And thankfully, an NVA soldier was able to stop them and protect him and get him into the village unscathed. And so he remembers, like, he sat down in this hut, and this old lady made this meal for him, and that was his last normal meal. And the rest of the time, it was the prison meal that was just this moldy bread with rat droppings and this moldy, like, milk and whatever. And so he was taken to Hanoi, and he was there for 6 years. He never moved out. He did see a lot of fellow soldiers come in and go, but they created a tap system that allowed them to talk to each other, communicate to each other in the cells. And so one of the really cool things is that they started on every Sunday, they started doing a church service. And what they would have is any of the men in there knew anything about the Bible, they said, all right, you're going to get up and preach today. And they would sing hymns for hours, and then they would have a sermon. And eventually the NVA soldiers didn't like that. And so they started they would go in, and whoever they thought was the ringleader, which was often the guy who was preaching, they'd take him out, and they would not see him ever again. And they decided that they didn't care, that they wanted to continue serving the Lord and praising him and worshiping him. And so they said, well, we'll do it with our last breath. And so they continued praising and worshiping and having that service until there was 2 guys left in that little cell that they had. And so eventually, that was kind of towards the end of the war when there's just a lot going on. And so eventually the soldiers they didn't care as much. And so they let them do their thing, and they actually gave them a Bible once, and they had it for 6 hours. And they used toilet paper and then mud and wrote down as many verses as they could. And each cell, they had 4 different cell blocks. And each cell block did a certain part of the Bible. And then they eventually, when they took it away 6 hours later, then they had almost a complete Bible on these toilet paper rolls. And they were able to continue holding services and preach specifically scripture from the Bible. And they would sing. He said it would last for hours. And he said he had never felt a presence like that before in a place that you wouldn't think any love or goodness or good things could come from. And so Guy actually went back he went back in 2023, and he went back to the village he was shot down at, and he actually met again the NVA soldier who captured him. That guy was, I think he was an extremely old guy, still wearing the uniform that he had when he had captured Guy. And he sat down in that same hut with that same old lady and ate the same meal with the 2 people who he said they saved my life. Even though, yes, I was a POW for 6 years and went through all this suffering, I wouldn't have been able to go through that and still survive without them protecting me. And so his story, he's a huge guy of faith. He is like, and faith and forgiveness is one of his biggest things. And he was constantly saying that. He's like, I don't hold any hate for anybody in Vietnam, nowhere. He was like, we all made mistakes. He goes, I've made mistakes. He goes, but ultimately God has redeemed everybody. And so Guy's a great guy. That's funny, but he's really cool, and he has a lot more stories. But yeah, and so that was one of those biggest things. It's just about faith. And so one of the things, there's a few pictures on there. I wish I could get more pictures on here. I didn't have enough time, but at the end, there's some pictures of me. There's this point during the trip that I was able to honor my late grandfather, my papa. Yeah, so this is where we got to do it. So he served at Phu Bai Air Base, which is about 5 miles outside of Hue, and we stayed in Hue for 3 nights. And we actually flew it's currently the air base is now a citizen airport. So we actually flew into that airport when we flew into Hue. And then on the 3rd day, which was December 18th, 2025, and if you don't know anything, December 18th, 2024 is when he passed away. And so I had asked Chastity, the trip organizer, I said, hey, is there any way that I can just do something that day? We can stop by Phu Bai, because we were driving to, I can't remember where we were driving to, on the coast, but we were going to drive by the airport again. And I was like, is there any way that we could just take a moment, and like nobody has to go, and like I just want to do something. And she was like, oh yeah, of course. And so her and General Schreffler and Quan, our tour guide, he's a Vietnamese citizen, they all kind of came up with a plan for me. And so that building, that structure that you saw, was a bunker that belonged to that base. It was just right outside of the airstrip. And so it dates back to that war as well, and wars before. And so I had brought a little guitar pick. If you don't know, my papa, he loves guitars. He built guitars by hand. And so it was this little guitar pick with a cross on it. And I just felt like it kind of embodied him as a person, just his love for music, and then just also his love for Christ. And so I kept that in my phone case the entire time we were there. And when they said that we were going to be able to do that, I was like, okay, I want to leave this here for him. And so we get to that bunker, and I was able to lay that there, and I was carrying his dog tags. in my other hand. So that's the first time that those dog tags have been back there in 55 plus years. And so I was able to leave that for him, and it was just a really somber moment. Obviously, tears were shed there, but it was really cool to get to have all of those people there, because we became like a family. Everybody, the students and the veterans, you get really close with your veterans. Everybody's assigned to one, and so like I had me and my best friend Alayna were assigned, including 2 other guys were assigned to Ed, and then every veteran had a few people assigned, but you get close to everybody. And so we had that moment where, like, I mean, I couldn't have I can't really express, there's the bunker. I couldn't really express like what I was actually thinking in the moment, but I can say like just the overall abundance of love that was going on. And those veterans did an amazing job of just being there for everybody. And then also as students, like we were supposed to, that was like our thing, is we were supposed to be there to serve them. Like a lot of them are older gentlemen who can't get around as well. And so often we are just that person to hold on to their arm and walk through the streets with them, and just talk to them about, ask them questions, and honestly just be an ear, just to be a listener for them, because they have so many amazing stories, filled with good, filled with evil, that just have made them into the person they are today. And so be able to talk to them about their experiences about that is really cool. And there's a picture of me hugging Ed during that moment. And I just remember thinking, like, the Lord provided me such an amazing group of veterans who, and I looked back at it, who, like, they represented everything my papa stood for in every way. I was a little nervous going on the trip just because I knew the timing was going to coincide with where we were, and I was just like this, there's a lot of emotion for this, for me and for my family. And so I was just like, I wasn't sure how I was going to act or how I was going to react to things that day. But the Lord provided me with these men who, you know, I was scared that like all of them were going to have these men that they're looking up to, and I was almost going to have this filled with like this sadness of like I'm not being able to go there with him, because, and I was just really scared of how I was going to react with that. But I didn't have to. None of that happened because I was walking alongside these men who resembled him in a lot of ways. And that picture of me hugging Ed, I was doing okay with the tears, but I felt like when I hugged him, it was almost like I was being hugged by my papa. And it was really cool to do that in that moment and get to be with all of those guys.
Real quick, talk about the connection.
Oh, yeah. So Ed, so my best friend Alayna, there's a photo of all 4 of us in there somewhere. Her and I met, so it's funny, Alayna, Malena. A lot of people think we're twins. We're not. But we met first semester of college, and her grandpa is Ed Wilson. He's the veteran. And so he's from the Branson area. And when he came back, he was a career military guy. And so after he retired, him and a bunch of veterans created a military and veteran coalition of the Ozarks. And what they do is they help veterans deal with things like with the VA. And so during this time of my papa's health was declining that first semester, somehow my Mima had gotten in contact with Ed. And we had no idea. Like, they had been talking to each other on the phone, and he had been talking to my family on the phone. I had no idea. I'd met Ed. I had sat down and had multiple dinners with him because he lives in Branson, so right off where the school is at, and had no idea. And so after my papa passed away, Ed was like, well, I can't. Malena was telling him something, and he was like, well, I know a Daryl Woods that I was helping out, and then we realized the connection. So this whole time he had been helping my grandma get like with the VA and get benefits and stuff, and got our contact with a lawyer that would help with that. And so when he found out about that, he told me, he said, Alayna, he goes, Chastity has asked me, the college has asked me for many years to go on this trip. They've never had a Navy veteran go before. And he's like, they've been asking me to go for many years. He goes, would you want to go on this trip? And I was like, oh, 1000%, of course I would. And so he was like, all right, I'm going to tell Chastity the only way I'm going is if you go with me. And then eventually became also Alayna. I want my granddaughter, and he kind of took me in and made me his adopted granddaughter. So he's like, I want my granddaughters to go. And
I'm going to insert something very quick, because typically the requirements for students to go, you have to be a junior or a senior. She was technically,
yeah, you had to have 61 credits or more.
she was just
And
out of her freshman year going into sophomore year. So there were a lot of red hoop type issues that they had to get.
Yeah. So Alayna and I, we weren't supposed to be able to apply. But Ed was pushing on Chastity so much. She was like, okay, you guys can apply. And obviously, if they're going to let us apply, you can't, you know. We have some really cool stories. And so we were able to go. So that was really cool. But yeah. So the whole time of just being able to be there with Ed and all those veterans was really, really cool. And getting to see all these guys just be so, like, I don't know, just so open about their experiences. There's a couple who revisiting some of those places kind of took them back. And there's quite a bit of emotion during those moments. I know a veteran or two had a couple of rough nights that they just couldn't sleep and things. And so that was one of our things as students there. Like, this wasn't a fun, we had a lot of fun, but it wasn't meant to be this, trip that you're going to this other country just to have fun. Like, it was we were there to serve these veterans, and that's what we did. That's what we wanted to do. And so I also want to talk about, we had one of our sponsors. This is a really cool story. It's one of my actually favorites to talk about. I think there is a picture of him in there, but Dr. Lloyd Nguyen, he is a professor at our college. He's a criminal justice professor, and he is Vietnamese, and he was born in Vietnam during the war, and he was 7 years old during the fall of Saigon. That's not him. But his mom worked for the U.S. Embassy in Saigon. And so they left 2 weeks before the actual fall of the city. But so he's 7 years old, grew up there, lived there. And so that's a picture, actually. That is the picture of this building right up there. And that's Dr. Nguyen. But so this is evacuation of the city of Saigon. And this building is actually, it was technically like a CIA building, secretly. Yeah. And so this is a helicopter, and throughout this whole building, there's stairs, and there's just a line of North or South Vietnam citizens waiting to take a helicopter to escape, because they knew communists were coming, and they wouldn't be able to really live a life if they stayed. And so Dr. Nguyen and his mom left on that building in a helicopter with just the clothes on their back. No money, no nothing. And they lived in a base in California for a little bit, and eventually I think she got married, and but he became a Marine when he grew up because of his huge just gratitude for those who fought for him and his country while he was there. So he became a Marine, and he also worked sheriff's office and stuff, but so now he's teaching at the college. But this was his first time going back to Vietnam in over 55 years. And so this was the moment here after seeing, because he grew up in Saigon. This was his reaction to seeing that building where he had left right there over 50 years ago. And I had never seen a man so grateful for those veterans. I mean, he was like, I don't think you understand, because a lot of those veterans, they didn't really realize who they were fighting for. And Dr. Nguyen was like, you were fighting for me, for my little 7-year-old self in his country. And he said, I'm so grateful for you guys. And so that's Greg. Greg and him had a great relationship. But and so that's one of my favorite stories, is just to see just him coming back in his raw emotion. I mean, he remembers his house. We didn't get to go by his house, but he was like, he's like everything. It was really cool to see him interacting with the people there. He speaks fluent Vietnamese as well, so he was talking, interacting with everybody. He loved it. He was like, I feel like a 7-year-old boy again. He's like, this is the best thing ever. And so, but he was a great guy. Yeah, let me see if I have anything else.
Alayna, do you know how many people would fit on a helicopter?
Probably 6-ish, 6 to 8.
You can always get one more.
But yes, during that time, people were scared, so they were just jumping on, and so they probably fit a lot more. And they were doing a lot more women and children, so they could probably fit a little bit more of that. But
so did they constantly come in, or was it just one helicopter?
They were constantly going until the communists entered the city. So it was the last I remember. Hold on, give me back to my test that I took. It was like 7:58 in the morning, the day that the communists overthrew the palace, there was a picture earlier of the palace. April 1970. Yeah, so yes, it's 75. I think it was April 10th. Something's telling me April 10th. It might not be, but yes, it was actually the last helicopter. It wasn't the last civilian, but it was the last. We had some Marines left in the at the embassy, and so that was the last helicopter that left of officially like evacuating all U.S. and other personnel from the area. So
yeah. The picture up there, it's a gentleman all in green, and he's bent over looking. What is that?
Okay, yes. So our first day. First actual day there, we were in Saigon, and so outside of Saigon, there's this. They're called the Chu Tunnels, and this is part of the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and it's kind of it's at the end of the trail, and so there are these tunnels that are completely just underneath. I can't remember how many miles they said of tunnels, but they're dug out by the Viet Cong, and so what that was that man showing us where those tunnel entrances could be at that you had no idea. So there's another picture that I have. It's not in there, but we took a picture of this like leaf area, and you can't tell anything. And that was that gentleman opening up the entrance to a cave, and it's probably about this big. Yeah. So they were fitting in that. Yeah, Vietnamese citizens they're smaller, and so it was actually, I felt like I was a giant. I'm walking out, I'm like, oh my goodness, they're really short people. But yeah, so the Chu Chi tunnels were a part of that. We had a tunnel rat, Job. He was a tunnel rat. That was one guy who was talking earlier, and so they would go down, and they would go head. They had to go head first because they wanted to see. Because if they went foot first and there was somebody down there, they would shoot at their feet. And so it seems weird why they would go head first, but they wanted to see, because oftentimes they might have booby traps. I mean, they would sharpen up bamboo sticks and put them in there, and a lot of times they would put feces on it. So you might not have died from the impact, but you would get an infection or something from that. And so very crafty people. But so Job, he actually had a cush job for a while when he joined. He was doing something in an office over there, and he felt like he could have done more. So he volunteered to be a tunnel rat, which to a lot of people that is a crazy thing to do, because they are literally putting their life on the line, because you have no idea what is in those tunnels. If there's actually people in there, or if there's a snake ready to bite you, or booby trap, whatever. And so he never had anything happen to him. I know he saw a lot of things, but he never got hurt or anything. One of the ground soldiers, Dan, he did fall into a trap, and his entire left leg is mangled from bamboo stick that went up. And so he showed us that. We were like, so, but yeah, so that was the Choo-Choo tunnels. It's a museum now, and they've like kind of like made the entrances to where you can actually get through them now. But they all connect, and like they even have rooms. Like there were rooms about this size, that would be like 15, 20 feet below ground, and they have it like all excavated, so like we're able to just like walk in a couple stairs and we're in it. But I actually went down one of the tunnels because they all connect, so you can literally walk through. But they don't. It's not like museums here in America that are like extremely nice. So like I walked in and I remember, so the tunnels are probably, it's like I had to like do this. So they're like 3 feet or something. So very small, like very hard to get around through. And I remember I was going through and I was just like, it was a group of people behind me too. And we were walking around and there was a 4-way and there was lights to 2 of them. But I turned on my phone and I turned to the left. And there was a huge bat right there. And I said, nope. And I turned back around. So that was like, oh, I was not expecting that because museums in Missouri or in these states would not. They like if they had something like cool like that, you'd be able to go through. So I was like, but yeah, so that was really cool. If you have any other questions, let me know.
How many of you was there?
How many total?
I've seen a bunch of them in that one picture.
Yeah, 20 students, technically 7 veterans. We did have 1 veteran who, when we arrived in Saigon, he got news that his wife had passed away while we were on the plane. So he ended up going back. That was Frank. He served in the Battle of Khe Sanh and the Battle of Hue during Tet, and he had been shot while he was serving. So he has a really interesting story and things. So really missed him that we didn't get to talk to him, but he did, because all the veterans do a presentation before we go to like where they were at, and so we were able to Zoom him in and talk to him, and he was able to talk to us, and that was really cool. But yeah, so I became a chopstick professional. Yeah, their food was definitely different. They don't really believe in flavor as much, like seasoning. Like no, like you would think they have India right over there. They could take some thing, but no, they don't really. They believe in just using greens like to natural flavoring, and it's not as good. But their meat was really good. Like not the chicken. The chicken was it. They didn't care what part of the chicken they gave you. So I had fermented chicken once. It was not good. But I was not as picky as I thought I was going to be. And I brought a bunch of snacks and I like ate a 1/4 of it. So it was pretty good. They have this thing that's called fish sauce. And so what they do is they catch the fish and then they put it up on their roof. And okay, so South Vietnam gets really hot. Really hot. And so they put up on the roof and they have metal roofs and they let it in the sun just ferment, marinate, whatever. And that juice that drips they collect it and then they put a little bit of stuff in it, but that's the fish sauce. And it's on everything, everywhere. And you can't get rid of the smell. And it is so bad. I remember our first restaurant that we ate at on our way to the Choo-Choo tunnels. I remember they were all like all these, because some of the sponsors have gone before and they were like, oh yeah, try it. And I was like, I don't like fish anyway. And they're like, well, it's okay. It's actually really good. Yeah, nope. It was not good. And I never touched that sauce ever again. It was extremely bad. Yeah.
Did the veteran that was the POW talk about his release from Hilton and what it was like to come back to the States?
He talked a little bit about it. From what I remember is he had a normal, like he came out with like all those videos that you saw of them leaving looking all like nice and they have a haircut and clean clothes and stuff. Like he was like, yeah, like the propaganda that they did to show that they didn't hurt any POWs or terrorize us or whatever was like extremely false. Like he says he remembers when they came up and they were like, it was like before they released them, and they were like, okay, they got him like new clothes, they give him a bath, and they said, all right, go play volleyball. And he was like, what? And they were taking videos and pictures to send to the media to show what a good time those POWs were having. So he remembers that. And then he remembers being let go, and they were like, he said it was really quick and they didn't really say much, but they just were like rolling them in. They took a shower, got a haircut, and they gave him these really baggy clothes so you couldn't tell how much weight they had lost. And I think he's from South Carolina. So
Prior to serving.
yes, I think so. Yeah, yes, he was, because
And his wife waited.
yeah, he had been writing letters because they said that they were going to send letters to show that, hey, yeah, I'm still alive. And he had wrote thousands of letters. And she didn't receive all those 6 years, she had no idea until it was like maybe a few months before they got released is when we were like going through the peace talks, and they decided to, we'll send out these letters now. And so she had no idea for 5.5 years, whatever that. But yeah, and then he was released, and I don't think he didn't have a military career. So he just, when he came back, he was done. But yeah.
Did they talk about how they were treated when they came back?
So some had a few interesting experiences. Others they said nothing happened. I know Ed, as a Navy guy, he was able to come back in civilian clothes. And so he said that obviously nothing happened to him. One of the guys, John, he was a helicopter pilot. He said that somebody gave up. Their flight was like delayed or something, but there was another flight, and he was like, wasn't able to get on that. Like he was the last person to get cut off from getting that extra standby ticket for that flight. And it was like, I think around New Year's or something. And there was this gentleman who gave him his ticket and like thanked him for his service and was like, you deserve this more than I do. And then a few others, I think Dan had said when he came back, it was just like the cold shoulder, goodness. And so he was like, they didn't really see much, but most of them said they know a lot of people who came back to terrible things, but most of them were pretty fortunate to come back to a loving community. So.
And my brother got off the plane in St. Louis and spit on his feet.
Yeah, they had talked about that a few times. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did they talk about any programs that they went through when they came back to try to process through some of the stuff they were dealing with when they were here?
Actually, I actually asked that question to a couple of the vets, like if they had to deal with anything when they came back. And they were like, I mean, yeah, we dealt with it, but they were like, I dealt with it by myself. It's like he said, I never even thought about, he's like, I had a family when I came back, and I got a job, and I was working to provide for my family. There wasn't any other time for anything else, he was like. And so one of them, Dan, his family owned the American restaurant in Kansas City. And so when he came back, he started working again. And now he owns a few restaurants in Branson area. But yeah, so they just went back to work, like. And so a lot of this was the first time of those men like thinking back to, wow, I actually went through some insane stuff, that there's emotions that I need to go through and talk about. So, but yeah.
A lot of kids in our high school wore POW bracelets during
Mhm.
that time.
Yep. Yeah, we had both of our helicopter pilots had been shot down. None of them they were in South Vietnam, so they didn't have to worry about really necessarily being captured as much. But yeah, Guy was the only POW with us, and then he knows a lot of people his buddies who were POW. There's a few who were missing in action that he's not 100% sure what happened to them. But another cool thing about him, there was this soldier, because he taught people also. He was like a trainer. I don't know what to call it, but and there's this one guy that he was teaching who he was like, he's this like skinny guy, and and he kind of made fun of him. Like he was like, they were all really mean to him, and apparently that was like years before the war, or before they went over. And then that guy ended up becoming a pilot who he ran into on his way to Hanoi, where he was shot down. They were transporting him village to village to Hanoi, and he ran into that guy, and he was like, the guy was like this completely different. He was, I think his name was Vincent. He's this huge burly man that you wouldn't have like recognized from and so, guy had been shot down with him and his co-pilot. So they were together, and they had already told the soldiers their names and all this information. And Vincent, when he came in, they had asked him all this information, like, tell us your name and that, and he refused. So they beat him, and they would continue until like he told him. And Guy continues to say, Guy was like, you can tell them, like, they can't do anything. Like, that's just so they can report it. And he was like, nope, I'm not going to tell him. And so they continued beating him as they transferred. And there's this time where like he was beat so bad that he couldn't even feed himself. He couldn't get up. Guy remembers he was just curled up in a little ball in the corner and constantly bleeding and just in agonizing pain because he refused to let them, and he said, I refused to let them win. And so Guy remembers one day they took him out again for another, what they thought was a routine interview again, which he'd come back with more bruises, but he never came back. And that was the one time that Guy said he was filled with the most hate. He asked the soldier, he said, what happened to him? And they said heart surgery. And what it was heart surgery, but he was taken for a scientific experiment. And so they just opened him up. And he died. And so Guy said when they told him that, because they knew when they said, oh, he had surgery, they knew that it was scientific. And so Guy said that he had never felt pain, like hatred like that for somebody ever in his life. And he kept on trying to remind himself that, like, okay, I still need to forgive him. But he said for years, like it took him years to get over that. He was praying. He would pray every day for hours on hours, like, and just trying to get through that pain, like out of his heart to eventually to where he could forgive them for that. And he just remembers like he could never say the word "I forgive you" until a few years later, when after all his praying and like just growth, he eventually got to the point that he was like, okay, Lord, you win, I forgive them. And he decided, I'm still going to fight for Vincent's life. Like, I'm still going to honor him. And so they would get like interrogated often. And he started doing this thing that Vincent said. He said, I'm not going to tell you anything. I'm not going to tell you anything. And this is actually an interesting story. This North Vietnam soldier came in and said, and he was like, you better be thankful for the North Vietnam government, for Ho Chi Minh, for providing you meals. And he was like, nope, I only thank God for providing my meals. And he was like, no, the only reason you have this is because of the government. The government gave this to you. Government gave this to you. And he's like, no. He goes, I don't think the government made the sun, made the rain, made the soil, made the plant. He goes, I don't think your government did that. He goes, who did that? God, my God. He goes, so I will thank God for that. And the soldier got extremely angry. And so he goes, well, how about you thank God for letting you die? And so he put him in a hot box, and in North Vietnam, in Vietnam in general, it gets really hot. And so in this hot box, it was pretty much, if you go in there, you're not coming back. You were gonna die. And so he was like, okay, this is my time. And as he was going in there, a soldier kind of stopped him and gave him a piece of cardboard and made like a fanning motion. And so he got in the hot box, and the other soldier didn't see that. So he got in there, and he was, for the first few hours, he was in there, and that saved him, being able to fan himself off. And then he continued praying. He was like apologizing to the Lord. He said, I remember, I was like, man, that was a little selfish of doing that. He was like, because he was doing that to see the reaction of the soldier. And he was like, that's a little selfish. He goes, I'm sorry, Lord. But he was just saying, thank you, Jesus, for this. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. And then he heard thunder and crack of lightning, and it started raining. And it rained the entire 4 days that he thinks it was 4 days. He assumed around 4 days, but it rained the entire time while he was in there. And so he survived. But yeah, so I think I'm about out of time. Maybe one more question. If anybody has one.
Before you got sent over, how many shots did they give you?
0, but I did have to take typhoid vaccine medication. It was supposed to be a shot, but I don't do shots, so.
And malaria pills?
I told you.
I think malaria, everybody's already vaccinated for that or something. I don't know. The only thing we had to do was the typhoid. And then we did have to take an antibacterial that we took the entire time we were there, and like 2 weeks
No
after.
gamma goblin shot?
Oh, no, they didn't. They did tell us about that. The veterans, they were like, yeah, they just take you and they just go, just give you shots, and then you had no idea what they were for, but yeah. No, we just only had the one.
Veterans from the area, like from the Branson area, or are they, and like how did they get selected?
Mm-hmm. So Dan is from like Bolivar, and then Ed's from Branson, and Greg is from the Springfield area, but the other 3 or 4 are from like John's from Florida, and I think Guy and Frank are from South Carolina. And so they just got connected to the college, and just because the college is very well known for supporting veterans in general. And so I know that like John, he's in charge of the Helicopters Association, like not in charge, but like he's up there for the Helicopters Association of Vietnam Veterans, and they have their yearly or quarterly meeting at College of the Ozarks. So, and John has been on the trip once before. He actually went on the very first one. So some of them are just connections, like obviously Ed, just because they knew he was in the Branson area, and his Veterans Coalition of the Ozarks and stuff. And then, oh my goodness, Dan, he's actually like best friends with the president of the college. So they had asked him if he would be interested. And he was like, oh, maybe. And so a few weeks later, he got a package in the mail for him to fill out all the information. So it was kind of like, okay, you're going.
Did the president go on the trip as well?
Yeah, our president PBJ went. So it was his birthday on the trip, so we got to celebrate that. But yeah, it's not every day that you get to travel another country with the president of your college, and so. But yeah, a lot of the guys. There's a silk factory we went to when we were in Hoi An, and you get this custom-made 100% silk suit for like $100, and they made it in less than 12 hours. Like we went there the night, they got it all suited up, and then the next morning at 8 in the morning, it was delivered to the hotel. So, and they come in and they do like if they need some more measurements or alterations done. So.
And I messed up the date. The shirt that I wore last Sunday was a silk shirt that she got from the trip.
Oh yeah. Bargaining. Yeah. Bargaining. I got 4 silk shirts for $30, which was pretty good because nobody could get her to get down less than $16 per shirt, and I got her to, what is that, $8 or whatever. So I was like, pretty good. But it was pretty fun to bargain with them. Actually, their currency is dong, and it's like for $1 US, it's 27,000 dong. So I have $40 US, but I'm like 4 million dong or whatever, and I'm like we were all millionaires over there, so it was pretty cool. But yeah, their economy is actually doing quite well. They're the number 1 exportation of rice, I believe, and then number 2 in coffee beans. They have a difference. So Brazil is number 1, and they have their coffee beans are like extremely like bitter and like very like a lot of people like it. And I tried coconut coffee and it was actually pretty good. But I'm not a coffee person, but there's probably a coffee shop like every street. So, but yeah.